I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today. Prior to assuming the presidency at the University of Minnesota on July the 1st, 2011, Dr. Kaler served as Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs and Vice President for Brookhaven National Laboratory Affairs at Stony Brook University in Stony Brook, New York. Dr. Kaler received his undergraduate degree from the California Institute of Technology in 1978 and his PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Minnesota in 1982. Before his appointment as Provost of Stony Brook in October 2007, Dr. Kaler was a member of the faculty at the University of Delaware from 1989 through 2007. He served as the chair of the Chemical Engineering Department from 1996 to the year 2000 and Dean of the College of Engineering from 2000 to 2007. Dr. Kaler was named the Elizabeth Inez Kelly Professor of Chemical Engineering in 1998. He was an assistant professor and an associate professor of chemical engineering at the University of Washington from 1982 to 1989. Dr. Kaler has received numerous awards and recognitions for his research, including election to the National Academy of Engineering in 2010. President Kaler and his wife Karen have two adult sons, Charlie and Sam, and in addition to traveling with his family, Dr. Kaler loves to read, to watch baseball. Did you enjoy that series? Holy cow. And play with his dogs, Mo and Lida. And with that, would you please join me in welcoming our guest today, Dr. Eric Kaler.
Thank you. It really is great to be here. Floyd and I had a terrific weekend together. It's nice to be able to come down here and be a little bit closer to Iowa. Rub that in. I won't call out some of the earlier comments. I do get to speak last, and I know that was the best that some of our Iowa friends could do. It was a great game. Longest 2 minutes and 48 seconds of my life when we had to give the ball back. Excuse me, but I went down to the locker room after the game, and you have never been in a room with a happier bunch of people. Marquise Gray had a smile I think was that wide. He was just delighted. Great for the team, great for the University of Minnesota, and good for the people of Minnesota to have a good showing on a football field. So thank you for the invitation to be here. Thank you, Pastor Marion, for your good work as president of the Burnsville Rotary, and Mayor Krebsbach of Mendota Heights, one of the university's great alums and former employee. I think both of you really deserve credit, and maybe even a Nobel Peace Prize, for persuading the various Rotaries from Burnsville, Eagan, Apple Valley, and the Burnsville and Dakota County Chambers of Commerce to come together and break bread. That's really a nice thing, and I appreciate the invitation. I'm getting to quite a few Rotaries recently, and Thursday I was at Rotary Club number 25. You know where that is? Duluth. It's actually where Rotary became a Rotary International. At least that's what the Duluthians will tell me as they began to bring some of their Canadian friends together. Greetings too also to Regent Laura Broad. Laura is back there. I have 12 bosses, 13, if you count my wife, and of the 12, Regent Broad is one of those, and I'm glad you're here with us today. Also, Senators Ted Daly and Chris Gerlach are here, and Representatives Mark Biskins and Pam Myra. I appreciate you being with us here today. Now today, as you well know, is Halloween. I love Halloween. Karen and I are having the Twin Cities campus faculty and staff and their children and grandchildren to the house. Now, they're not all going to come, but about 275 of them are going to be there. They'll get their photograph made with Goldie, and we get to see some excellent Halloween costumes. I am channeling the 16th President of the United States. I'm the 16th President of the University, the 16th President of the United States, Abe Lincoln. I'm going to have a black beard, full gear. Karen's going as Mrs. Lincoln. And when the staff heard about this, they said, oh no, Karen loves the theater. Hopefully it'll turn out all right. and we'll just be fine. I'm told that university presidents tend to lose their sense of humor after 4 months or so, but I'm getting ready to start my 5th month as president of the University of Minnesota, and I am as excited and energized as I can be about the great university we have in the state of Minnesota, and about the opportunities and, frankly, challenges in front of us. One of the things I've discovered about the university is that we're not especially good at telling our story. We've been a little bit too Minnesotan and a little bit too bashful. But we affect the lives and careers of so many Minnesotans and so many communities around the state that we have to be better about telling our story. We're the 5th largest employer in the state. With the excellent graduates that we produce and the health, technology, food science, and engineering discoveries we make, we're engaged every day as the state's economic engine. To drill down to the communities here in Burnsville, Eagan, and Apple Valley, we at the university employ 715 of your neighbors in very good jobs. We have nearly 15,000 alums amongst your neighbors, and nearly 19,000 degrees have been granted to folks who live in your communities. 19,000 degrees. So we have a real impact on the Twin Cities area and across the state. I spoke about some of that last week at the Governor's Job Summit in St. Paul. There I told about 700 of the state's leading business, labor, government, and nonprofit leaders about our increased graduation rates, the excellence of our incoming freshman class, the power of the state's only research university, and the engagement we have with communities from Crookston to Morris, Rochester to Duluth. I told them we deliver jobs. The university awards 90% of all science, technology, engineering, and math PhDs in the state, 85% of all MD degrees, and 100% of the dentistry, pharmacy, and veterinary medicine degrees in the state of Minnesota. I told them that we simply cannot continue to disinvest in public higher education, be it at the U or be it with our friends in the MnSCU system. I told them as the world gets flatter, the University of Minnesota needs to broaden its brand, improve its reputation, and deliver on its potential as one of the world's great research universities. Now, afterwards, someone, a very influential person actually, told one of our staff that they had enjoyed my speech, but then they said something like, "Boy, he was pretty forceful. That wasn't exactly Minnesota nice. He really made the place sound great." Well, duh. The place is great. We have a great story, a collection of great stories, great students, great advances, great contributions, and many things to be proud of, and many things to justify the support we receive from the state and from the people of Minnesota. But at the heart and soul of any great university are its students. So let me tell you a little bit about our students. Now, a respectable number of you graduated from the University of Minnesota, or at least stood up to avoid paying $1. And I know that 15 or 20 years ago, the undergraduate experience at the University of Minnesota was not all that it should have been. We didn't pay enough attention to our undergraduate mission. And we know that from alumni surveys of people who went to the college at the U and tell us they felt disengaged, and that disengagement was reflected in poor retention rates and awful graduation rates. That has changed dramatically. If you haven't seen us lately, you haven't seen us. We do a terrific job of engaging our undergraduates, of providing a wonderful environment for learning and a great variety of out-of-class experiences that shape our graduates to lead the world. Now, I had lunch with some students in our honors program recently, and Sam Schreiner of Lino Lakes was there. Let me tell you about Sam. Sam's a senior. He's in the marching band. He spent 2 years in the space physics program evaluating satellite data. He studied abroad in China, and he's already been named a prestigious astronaut scholar, which is an award given by former astronauts. So in fact, he really is a rocket scientist, and he's our rocket scientist. Then there was Aaron Diamond, a sophomore from a small town near, I'm afraid to say, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Aaron started doing research as a freshman at the Department of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences. She's currently working on research about autistic language processing and is being trained as an MRI operator. Those are just two of the 69,000 spectacular students we have at the university. Future proud alums and future employees of yours. Sometimes I say they might be future employers of yours too. Terrific kids. Our entire freshman class this year was special too. The best academic qualifications at the university ever. 40,000 applicants to the university, 5,400 enrolled. Highest ACT scores ever. 27.5 was the average. In science and engineering, the average was 30. In our honors college, the average is 33. Now you can only get a 36. So the average is 33. That is equal to or better than the ACT scores at Harvard, MIT, Stanford, etc. in our honors college. It's a good place. Most national merit scholars ever, 167 national merit scholars, not national merit semifinalists, not national merit finalists, national merit scholars. 167. We think that is the largest number in any of the public Big Ten institutions. If the U ever was a safety school, it is not anymore. It's an aspirational school, it's a school that's a treasure, and it's absolutely worthy of our investment. A couple of weeks ago, we announced that we were going to increase the enrollment at the university, undergraduate enrollment, by 1,000 slots targeted to the STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and math, and nursing. Those are graduates that will feed Minnesota's economy. And we're increasing the number of students in those fields for two reasons. One is the demand for students trained in those fields, and the other is the demand by students to go into those fields. That's a great story. The number of applicants to science and engineering in the College of Biological Sciences from 2005 to 2011 has more than doubled. So we have qualified students wanting to go into some of the most critically important fields in the country. So as we increase the number of students, we're increasing the standards for admission, and we're creating a powerful educational institution for the state of Minnesota. But it's not only about the hard sciences. Our students are top young communicators graduating in Minnesota. They're accountants, social workers, political scientists, Spanish and Chinese language majors, and dancers. You name it. You should also know that the selectivity does not come at the expense of Minnesota students. This year, about 64% of the new freshmen graduated from a Minnesota high school, and that fraction has remained essentially steady for the past decade. When you include transfer students, about 70% of our undergraduate population are Minnesota students. Now, we obviously bring students from other states, even Wisconsin, and other countries. They add diversity, and they bring talented people to Minnesota, and when talented people come to Minnesota, they can stay in Minnesota and build a life and a career. Now let me turn to the other side. That's the people side. Let me turn to the other side of our role, and that is our mission as the state's only public research university. Now, it's difficult sometimes to give the so-called elevator speech about why you should have a research university. If you have one, why it should be good, and if you have a good one, why you should keep it good. But I'm going to try. You should care about having a research university in your backyard, and you should care about a place that is home to new innovations, new inventions, and new ideas and new cures, because all of our campuses create value, create innovation, create trained individuals who go into jobs in fields that didn't exist when we were in school. Those people feed Minnesota's economy. Those people feed the 20 Fortune 500 companies that are located in Minnesota, They're critical to the hundreds of startup companies that begin every year in Minnesota and the thousands of small businesses in our state. I went to the Minnesota Medical Foundation Discovery Dinner last week, and the inventions, innovations, and cures that are coming down the pipeline of our medical research enterprise are simply amazing. We have scientists who are certain that we can eliminate heart disease within our lifetime. That's happening on your Twin Cities campus, and heart disease is the single largest killer in the United States. Last year, we received over $800 million in external research funding, 8th among all public research universities in the nation. And to get this funding from the federal government and other agencies is not easy. You write a proposal, it's reviewed by your peers, and if it's at the top of the list, you get funded. And the top of the list is the top 8 to 10% of proposals that are received. So the pay line is less than 1 in 10. And our faculty generated proposals that were evaluated and brought $800 million in research funding to the state. Now, research is an expensive and labor-intensive process. You can't go on Amazon.com and order up a researcher and have her delivered by FedEx the next day. It is an extensive process, almost handcrafted, almost one-on-one education for years about how to do research, about how to master your field, and about how to generate the ideas and the innovations that put you in the top 10% of idea generators that get money to keep doing your work. A university like ours is a cradle of creativity, and that creativity runs from the sciences through medicine to the arts and humanities. That university, that cradle of creativity, makes Minnesota and the Twin Cities region a cultural magnet. Now, I've recently come back to Minnesota, but I'm pretty sure that people don't come to Minnesota because of the weather. People come to Minnesota because it's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. It's a great place with a great quality of life. And the University of Minnesota is central to that quality of life. Now, from the pacemaker to the black box, from Honeycrisp apples to taconite, the university's history of discovery is rich and profound. And in many important ways, this university has sculpted Minnesota's social, scientific, and cultural environment. We have this university because of the investments that our parents and our grandparents made for us. Now, I can't guarantee you that if we continue to make those investments, we'll continue to make discoveries. But I can guarantee you that if we don't make investments in the University of Minnesota, we will not have a university that can help provide the standard of living we have for our sons and daughters or our grandsons or granddaughters. That won't happen. So let me end by outlining for you quickly some of the key principles of my administration at the university and my agenda. First is going to be excellence. We have to be excellent in everything that we do. We must continue to drive to be a top-tier public research university, and I want us to be in the conversation nationally with Berkeley, Michigan, UCLA, North Carolina, Virginia. I want us to be known across the nation and around the world as a game-changing global university for the 21st century. In many ways, we already are. We need to brag a little bit, and we need to get some things better. But in many ways, we are already at the top flight. Second, access. Even as we work to attract academically exceptional students like Sam and Aaron, we must strive to keep the U accessible to all qualified Minnesota students, regardless of their family income. That is incredibly difficult in a time of diminishing state support, but it has to be our priority. Third is diversity. Our commitment to access has to continue to promote diversity amongst our student body. We especially must work with our K through 12 colleagues to ensure that students are prepared for success at the university. We also have to work with our K through 12 colleagues to close the alarming achievement gap between white students and students of color in Minnesota. We have the third largest gap in the United States, followed only by Michigan and Wisconsin. Interesting upper Midwest demographics. We have to engage to close that gap and improve the achievement of all students. And in that world, we will be able to bring more diverse population to the university. Fourth, of course, is research, a key priority and a key part of our land grant mission. Our investments in research drive a high rate of return. Governor Dayton spoke at my inauguration last month, and I still can't believe I use the words "my inauguration" in a sentence. It's a little humbling. But he tossed out a remarkable fact. He said that the University of Minnesota's annual economic impact on the state of Minnesota is equal to the combined impact of all 8 research universities in the Boston area, some of whom we've heard of. Now, I was sitting next to the governor when he said that. And I said to myself, boy, that sounds great, but it cannot be true. So we checked. And in fact, in 2003, a Boston consulting firm, one of theirs, tallied the economic impact of Harvard and MIT and BU and others, and they arrived at a total of about $7 billion annually. $7 billion. The economic impact of the University of Minnesota last year, $8.6 billion. So our university, our one research university, matches the output of those famous 8. Now, he put that statistic into perspective by saying that his father often told him, if you have all of your eggs in one basket, you better take mighty good care of that basket. I think we all need to take a little bit better care of our basket, our University of Minnesota basket. Statistics. When I was here as a graduate student, I started in 1978. I was 12. University of Minnesota provided, the state of Minnesota provided 43% of the university's budget. This year, 18%. So while we hope for and can fully justify continued investment by the state, we also have to turn our full attention to the operational efficiency of what we do. We have to have business processes that are the best in the world. We need to do our HR and our IT and our purchasing and all the other stuff all of you as business people do as well as anybody in the world does it. We cannot afford to do anything less than that. And we will look carefully, unemotionally at our academic programs, validate those that are good and great, and if they're not good or not great, we need to not do them. So that's why another key principle and key effort must also be in philanthropy. I've been meeting with business leaders, donors, and some of you to encourage enhanced financial support for the U. Private support is profoundly important, especially as we face public disinvestment and a rising cost of tuition. But philanthropy will not and should not replace public investment. Philanthropy can take us from very good to excellent, but I will not give up on clearly articulating the role our state and federal government must play in supporting public higher education. Finally, advocacy is another part of what I do and what I'm doing here today. I'm trying to tell the university's story. I'm trying to impress upon you the vast range and scope of what we do and the critical importance of the University of Minnesota and its research and educational enterprise. We'll be bringing to the legislature this year a fairly straightforward, unsexy capital request for a bonding bill. It's focused on renovating and refurbishing buildings, improving energy efficiency, and transforming our physical plant. It's clear we must maintain the infrastructure of our university at the core of what we do, but we also need to continue to invest in its operation. So I ask you to reflect upon the University of Minnesota, and if you think a research university, an engine of discovery, is an important thing to a state, I'd encourage you to discuss with your elected leaders how important the university is to this state and its future. And I would encourage you to do that as frequently as you possibly can. And if you need any help, give me a call. Thank you for having me here today. Good. We're very happy to take questions or respond to comments you might have. Please.
I heard that you had 40,000 applications, but accepted only like 3,700. Is that for new enrollment students? Is that what that number represents?
I gave the shorthand answer. We had 40,000 applications. We accepted about 16,000 of them, a little bit less than 40%. And of those accepted students, 5,400 of them came to the university. Please.
Thank you, President Kaler. The question, some of the major employers in technology in particular talked to me about the challenge of taking skilled employees from the coasts and bringing them to Minnesota. You talked about the 70% of the EU who's from Minnesota already. Do you have a goal to expand the number of out-of-state people, especially from the coast, who will bring that technology training and get trained here in the University of Minnesota and then staying in the Midwest as well?
That is one of the good reasons for growing the fraction of non-Minnesota students. Right now, the single largest state besides Minnesota that's represented at the university is Wisconsin. And we've had a long series of tuition reciprocity arrangements with them that have more or less expired, morphed. And so it seems to me that we should be able to reduce that number, bring students by recruiting more effectively on the East and West Coast to Minnesota. And I firmly believe that when people come to Minnesota, they're educated, they put down roots, they get married, and they stay. Michigan is a shining example of a state university for which that has worked very well, and I think it's a good reason to move our fractions here. But I do not want the fraction of Minnesota students to drop very much below from where it is, for a couple of reasons. One is a selfish reason. I can't go to St. Paul and ask for state resources if I have a university that's not predominantly serving the people of the state of Minnesota. Even I wouldn't do that, and I love the university. So I want to maintain that. And we are a net exporter of college students. There are still qualified students who chose not to come to the university and go out of state. So I see changing the distribution of where students are from, but not dipping much below that 62 to 65% in-state students in our freshman class. Please.
You mentioned the honors program and the high qualification of the students. Where are they coming from? Are they all from Minnesota, or are they from all over the country, or where are they?
That's a good question, and I love numbers, but that's a number I don't know. I do know that the fraction of out-of-state students in that honors college is somewhat larger than the student body overall, but there's still a lot of very good Minnesota kids in that honors college.
I have one follow-on question.
Sure.
How many students are there that average is 33 on here?
There are about 450 students each year in the honors college, so we're about 2,000 overall. We'd like to sort of hold that honors college to about the top 10% or a little bit less, maybe 8% of the entering class. So a lot of smart students there. Please.
Fred, if you look ahead 20 years, what's the university going to look like? Changes? What's your goal?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think it's completely possible for the University of Minnesota to be, as I said, known as one of the best public institutions in the country. We should be a magnet for students. We should have 65% Minnesota students, the 35% students from around the country. Academically excellent, so I'd like us to continue to see the academic excellence continue to grow. I would like to see us focused more tightly on programs where we're truly excellent. So I would imagine, particularly in the graduate fields, that the span of graduate degrees we would offer will probably shrink somewhat, but the quality of students would be high. I want us to continue to be focused on our research mission. So I would like to enable our faculty to continue their success in research grants, continue to be the driver for innovation. I didn't talk very much about tech transfer to this group, but I would like to see us much more effectively translating the discoveries and inventions we make into the marketplace, either with partnering with existing companies or starting up, so that commercialization will drive revenue, and it also drives society forward. Our business is to create and invent, and the business of business is to make those products for the benefit of society. And we should move across that more quickly. I would like to see our medical enterprise in particular, including our partnership with Fairview for our clinics and hospitals, to move to a better place so that we'll have the resources available to drive the medical school back to the top tier where it belongs. So a more diverse and national-based undergraduate population, a more focused series, still comprehensive, but focused series of graduate programs, a research focus. And did I mention football? In the back, please.
What percentage of the students in the graduate program come from outside the United States?
That depends dramatically on the field. In science and engineering, it's well over half. In the humanities, performing arts, it's a fairly small percentage. So it's all over the map, depending on fields. And again, in science and engineering, that doesn't reflect the fact that we don't want students from Minnesota or from the United States. It's again reflecting the fact that in the STEM fields, there simply aren't enough qualified people in those fields in the United States to populate the graduate programs and to do the research that we are so fortunate to be funded to do. Please.
Is the University of Minnesota turning to a lot of online courses?
So the online question is an interesting one. The short answer is that we certainly offer a pretty broad range of online things, but we don't have an online strategy that's as focused and as well articulated as it should be. That is a part of a conversation about educational innovation in teaching and hopefully learning that we need to have across institutions, and I want the University of Minnesota to be in the lead there. Online serves certain student populations and meets certain opportunities better than anything else. But I like to tell the joke, and the age in the room here is I think most of you either have had or have teenagers. I had two of them, boys. There was no way when they turned 18 they weren't getting out of the house and going to college. So that is a social phenomenon that I don't think is going to change. So I think the bricks and mortar institutions have a long future. But sharpening how we teach and how students learn and using as a component their technology, broadly called online, is going to be part of the university's future, even for students who are physically on campus. The idea of looking at a lecture online and then going to class for discussion and workshops and learning is something I think will surely come. Please.
In recent years, there's been very little, if any, discussion about IQ. I'm kind of curious how much IQ plays in the ability to educate a variety of people. Is it IQ or is it education, teaching ability that makes a significant difference? Well,
I think it's always easier for a teacher to claim success if he or she is dealing with a class of really smart people. We certainly don't use IQ as an indicator per se. As we look at projecting students for success, we do look at standardized tests, which is an ACT at Minnesota, SAT at other places. We look at high school performance and class rank. And the people in the field will tell you that class rank is the best predictor of success in higher education. And of course, some high schools are moving away from providing class rank, which is another story, a longer story. So we don't assess for that per se, but we get some pretty good students at the University of Minnesota, so their IQ is probably pretty healthy. Please.
What's your average class size?
There's obviously a distribution. The way we look at this is a fraction of classes that have students less than 20 and a fraction of classes that have students more than 50. And those numbers, I'm not going to remember them precisely. It's on the order of a third that are less than 20 and less than a third that are more than 50. And those numbers surprisingly haven't changed very much over the past decade or so. I would have thought, looking at it, that given our budgetary constraints, that we would have increased large sizes more and quit teaching smaller classes, though it hasn't changed very much over the past decade. Please.
Looking at the debt that some of these students acquire over 4 years, what do you look at doing or possibly examining as far as being financially accessible?
Right. Well, that's a key problem. I'll give you the statistic. The average University of Minnesota graduate graduates with $27,000 in debt. That's the average, which means some kids have zero and some have a whole lot more than that. I frankly will tell you that 27,000 doesn't make me lose sleep at night. That's an investment that young person is making in themselves. It's the cost of a pretty nice car. I can live with that. I don't want it to get any lower, any higher, and obviously we'd like to drive it lower. But the university budget contains an important part from the state and an important part from tuition. So as the state dollars have decreased, we have made up for that decrease 2/3 of the reduction by being more efficient and effective internally in our budget, and ask the students to share in the cost of their education by increasing tuition to cover 1/3 of the amount we've been reduced. That's moved our tuition to a level that is probably about as high as it can go, but our peer institutions are increasing tuition at rates faster than we are, so maybe in a marketplace sense we could go higher. I don't think it's right for us to go higher. But when those state dollars are reduced, as an institution, you can do what we did, which is save some money and cost shift other money. Or you can decide, okay, that's the level of dollars we have, and we're going to scale the quality of the institution to match those dollars. And we're not going to do that. So we are going to fund the excellent programs that we have, and that costs real money. Another way to look at it is in 1978, the state of Minnesota subsidized education and tuition was low. That subsidy's gone away and tuition has gone up. Average debt of $27,000, as I said, I think is manageable. Not easy by any means, but manageable. As we look to our 2/3 part of how we save costs, that drives us back into having to be more operationally efficient and having to drive value out of our business processes, and we're working on that like crazy. In the back?
Follow-up question.
Sure.
I'm sorry. The 27,000 average now, how does that compare to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
You know, I'm sure it's higher. I don't have those numbers on the top of my head. Behind?
Yeah, following up on your answer to the student IQ question, you know, a lot of our public school districts in Minnesota are facing budget and funding issues as great as or not greater than the University of Minnesota. And the implications of that are that the students, Minnesota students, talented and smart Minnesota students aren't getting a lot of the fundamental education that they need to compete to get into college. Does the University of Minnesota recognize that, and how does it help bridge that gap with the public school system and recognize and bring in these kids while maintaining the high standards of student selection that you're talking about.
Yeah, I am committed to engaging the university to work with our K through 12 colleagues on problems of readiness and problems of the achievement gap. We have a group that includes most of the private funders, foundations and corporate funders, Steve Rosenstone, the head of MnSCU, myself, and the supervisors of both the St. Paul and Minneapolis School District, and a variety of others, including the mayors of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And so we met recently, and Mayor Coleman pointed out that we have an educational emergency. And that if you're a mayor and you have an emergency, like a lot of snow, people expect you to deal with that emergency, and if you don't, you get a new mayor. And so that call to action in that group was significant. And I think you'll begin to see, I know you'll begin to see a more coherent integration between MnSCU, the university, K through 12. You'll begin to see more focus in privately funded activities in the school system, and I think you'll be able to see progress. My pledge is that I have thousands of students who are able, and I think would be willing, to engage in service learning and community outreach. The statistic is if you don't read to a pre-K child 20 minutes a day, that kid doesn't learn to read, doesn't like reading. And if you don't like reading, school's not fun. And if school's not fun, you don't do well, etc. I would love the University of Minnesota to be known nationally as the institution with the best engagement with K through 12, and particularly the best reach of mentors and readers of any institution in the country. And I'd like to see us get there. Please.
My wife and I both went to the University of Minnesota in the late 50s, early 60s. We were both 12 at the time.
Yeah, I thought so.
But at that time, we could work and pay for our tuition. Neither one of us had any help from our family. We could work part-time during school to 45 during school, and also full-time in the summer. And we, ended up without really any debt to speak of at the end. Can you give me a couple of reasons why that has changed so dramatically, where that isn't even close to possible?
There are two reasons. The predominant one is that when you were there, the state's support of the University of Minnesota budget was well over 50%. So your education was actually subsidized by the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota. And they don't do that anymore. And so tuition has to increase for the reason I said. The other interesting statistic is that sometimes you can do that calculation in terms of how many hours you would have had to work at a minimum wage job in order to pay tuition. And that number is a lot bigger now than it was then, partly because tuition is bigger, partly because the minimum wage as scaled as an income level hasn't increased as rapidly as some people might think it should have. That's a minor question. Minor point. The real point is you were subsidized by the state of Minnesota to get an education.
Let's go one more question.
Please.
We are a consulting engineering practice, and we hire a lot of U of M grads. And I guess I'm a little concerned when I hear that 16,000 get accepted, but only 5,400 matriculate or join. And I guess I'm wondering, what the university is doing to try and improve that. So if the kid's considered good enough to go there, why aren't they going there?
Actually, that acceptance ratio of people who matriculate when we're offered by us is about, I think this year, 38, 39%. That's actually a very good number nationally. That's a very good number because kids apply to half a dozen or more schools now. And they'll get into 5 or 6. Well, they'll only go to 1, and so we might do that. So the only schools that have above about a 70% acceptance rate of offers are the very top flight privates. So the Harvards, the Stanfords, Yales. Our number, I actually should know this, but our number is certainly in the better part of the Big Ten. So it's part of knowing the industry in that sense. But that's not a bad number for us.
Dr. Kaler,
Thank
so
you.
much for being our guest.